So we're going to talk today about navigating co-parenting in two households. We're going to go over generalized, just kind of step through of what that looks like and how to set that up. But also at the end, we're going to discuss some different strategies and things that can help make things a little bit easier for both you and your child. So the first piece that we're going to talk about today is going to be the schedule and how to determine that schedule. You're going to hear everybody say, do what's best for the children, which absolutely 1,000% is what we need to be doing. But we also need to pause and think about what works best with our lives. What I always tell parents, as we talk through this with them, because we do take a partner with them often, is how do you maximize the time that you spend with the children? So working to establish that schedule, is it a 2-2-3? Is it biweekly? Is it somewhere in between? We first want to think about parent work schedules. Does a parent work on the weekends, so that's not conducive? Does one of the parents work later in the evening? Do you have school scheduled extracurricular activities? Does somebody help coach a little t-ball team? All of those pieces can play a role in what works best for your family and determining that schedule. The next thing that you really want to talk through is that logistics piece. Are your your co-parenting households 2 hours apart or 10 minutes apart? How do you minimize car time and drop-off time to allow, again, more quality time spent with your children? And the last piece of that is, what desires do your children have? Is there a special Taco Tuesday night that they usually have with mom that they would be remiss if they missed out on? Is there something with a co-parent that they usually do on Wednesday nights, a special show or watching a baseball game? If you can work those into your co-parenting schedule, that's going to allow for the best consistency for your child moving forward. So again, the first thing you want to do is really looking at what works best for the family as a whole when you're working to establish that schedule. The next piece is aligning on rules and routines. That's a mouthful and can sound really scary because rules and routines feel very structured, right? And no room for flexibility or change. But we have to understand how rules and routines affect children. Routines build confidence. They establish a sense of security for children, and they really help establish good habits. Routines are what provides consistency and security and what really allows children to function and in a structured atmosphere, and they know what to expect. The first thing that I always tell parents when we're talking through this is to pause, right? Think about what's really important to them with rules and routines and where can they best compromise or can be a little more lax. You want to talk about things down to how are you going to handle birthdays? Or what bedtimes look like and what are bedtime routines? How are you going to communicate with each other? Is it going to be through text, through email, through an app? And then obviously that drop off and pickup times, what do those look like? Are they going to be in a specific place? Is that going to be school? Are you going to meet it at a house? So really establishing what that looks like as a whole is so incredibly important. But again, understanding where to compromise. And that flexibility is a huge part of this routine piece. So often I see parents get so frustrated because, they've established this routine and one parent always, changes or has a different perspective. But you have to understand, that flexibility is part of life because life does come at you. Maybe one of you works until 7:30. Holding true and steady to an 8 p.m. bedtime is not going to be the best for the child because there's no quality time spent, after work. So understanding where to flex, where to be hold steady, and where you guys are going to be aligned is so incredibly important and should really be done early on. And I know I'm talking about early steps in establishing these co-parenting households, but just knowing that it's never too late to go back and establish, where your alignment is on rules and routine and take another look at the schedule to see what works best for the children. The next piece where we're going to spend a little bit of time is the communication piece. Communication between each parent as well as between the children. We know that everything thrives on good communication, right? From work to home to friendships, good communication is what makes the world go round. And good communication, if we're being honest, is what's lacking so often. The first piece of advice we always give is to meet with your children together. It's much easier for you to talk to your children and then them to talk to the children. But meeting together shows alignment around those schedules and rules and routines, but also shows that you're still a family and you still both care about the children. And then don't be afraid to talk about, big feelings and be prepared for big questions. So often we say little people, so there must be little emotions, when in all reality, little people have the same big emotions that we're having. And then understanding your children's personalities and the differentiators in those. You may have one little guy that is so easygoing and he could care less if he's with mom, other mom, dad, aunt, grandma, what house he's at. He's easygoing and goes with the flow, and that's fantastic. You may have another little guy that's pensive and really gets fixated on, where is he going to be, who's going to pick him up. And having this conversation, he may be worried that his favorite sippy cup may not be at the other person's house, or that his blankie will get left behind. Those little pieces can be all consuming and create so much anxiety for a child. So being unified in your message, giving them space to talk about how they may be worried about something, and letting them know that you're on the same team is so incredibly important. We also always suggest having a kid-friendly calendar in each home. Having a calendar will show them, what day they're going to be with each parent, who's picking them up, and then also other important pieces. Maybe it's t-ball practice or piano lessons that are on the calendar. Maybe you have a scheduled family cleaning day or a day you're going to see grandparents. Children always thrive when they know what's expected of them and then what's coming next. And if you have little ones that can't yet read, picture schedules are absolutely wonderful. We actually have a classroom in one of our centers right now where one of our children is actually transitioning into a co-parenting 2-household situation and was having a lot of anxiety about who was picking him up that day. He would probably ask the teacher 15 times, he's 3, who's picking him up, and worried that the right person was going to pick him up. The parents provided a calendar, and we actually have a calendar with little cute pictures of mom and dad that go on the day that mom or dad is picking the child up. So whenever he feels anxious or feels overwhelmed about it, he can go to the calendar and he knows what time the parent and who is picking him up for the day. And it really helps him feel secure in the situation and knowing that he's not going to be forgotten at school and that both parents do care about him and will be there to get him. So we're going to just pause and move backwards for a second about those big emotions. We touched on them for a moment about little people, big emotions. But I think it's important to step through this because big emotions for both adults and children are difficult. And the only difference between a child and us is that hopefully we've been either taught or learned some great coping mechanisms and how to process through those. Whereas our little guys are looking to us to set the standards of how to cope with the emotions, and looking for us for validation and knowing that big emotions are okay. When you have, an emotional reaction to this conversation or anything, whether it's with the co-parenting situation or otherwise, here's some great, just simplistic steps to step through with your child. First and foremost, connect with them. That's physically and emotionally. Putting a hand on their arm, giving them a hug, saying out loud, this is a safe space. You can be emotional. You can have this emotion. Sounds so simplistic, but does so much to calm a child's emotion and help them, regain some control. So connecting with them. And then you want to empathize, validate, and check in. As a parent, our natural reaction is, oh my gosh, you're sad or upset. Here, take this or have this, or let me fix this. It's really important to slow down and say, I see that you're upset. I know that you're sad that you have to go to mom's house this afternoon and you want to stay here. Or I know that you're angry because your brother took your toy and broke it. Validating that it's okay to have those feelings. It takes a little bit more of our time, right? We're in a fast-paced world where our head is, what do we have to cook for dinner and what time do we have to be at t-ball practice? But really taking the time to slow down, validate those emotions, empathize for the way they're feeling, and check in to make sure that you're understanding those emotions, going to go a long way to making a child feel okay with having emotions. The next piece and the last piece is, discussing those coping choices. You have a bigger guy, 5+, you can say, okay, I see that you're frustrated with what happened at school. How can we help to make sure that you don't get frustrated tomorrow? And help guide them through conversation and help them come up with how to solve their problem. Again, does it take a whole lot more time than saying, how about next time you sit on your homework earlier and you won't be so frustrated? But letting them really talk through and finding a solution is going to go a long way in the future of how they deal with the emotions. And then your little guys are acting out behaviorally so often when they have big emotion. I see that you're angry and I understand that you're angry, but it's not okay to yell at your brother. What you can do is you can go outside and yell until you're calmed down. Keeping ourselves kind of cool, calm, and collected and giving them the option of doing something else while still validating their emotion can be really important. Just wanted to give you some of these simplistic steps because, as you go through the transition into a two-parent household, there can be a lot of big emotions involved, and making sure that's a safe place for you all to feel them is really important. Now that we've talked about, how to establish that schedule, how to work through aligning on routines and rules that are going to be followed in all households, I want to give you just a couple of strategies that, in our experience and working with families through this, things that have really helped make the transition smooth or allowed the children to feel really good about what's happening. First is way easier said than done is keeping our own emotions at a focus. When your son or daughter has to go to the co-parent for the weekend, it's easy to say, I really don't want you to go. It's easy to say, I'm going to miss you so much while you're gone. I can't believe we're going to be gone from each other for 3 days. But using that, guilt tactic or, expressing a little too much emotion can make the child feel the same way. They want to please you. They want to make you feel better. So they may say, I don't want to go, or I can't believe I have to go, and play into that same emotion. It's great to say, hey, I'm going to miss you, but I know you're going to have a great time this weekend, and I can't wait to see you on Monday and hear about your weekend is much more productive for the child. Really keeping our own hurt feelings, anger, and guilt out of that conversation and really just providing, support for the other parent's role. With that, communicating about your child with your co-parent is so vitally important. If your kiddo is having some difficulty with bedtime routine over the last couple of days, it's going to be so much easier to let the co-parent know what they should be expecting and to be able to talk about a way that you can handle it together. Communicating about schedule changes and the needs of the children early and often are going to lead to a great co-parenting relationship. And we can tell you from our experience, and I'm sure yours as well, it is having a good co-parenting relationship is absolutely priceless and wonderful for the child. The next one, I actually feel like this in particular for the children of the age that I deal with the most often, that 1 to 6-year-old range is the most important piece, is establishing home in both households, especially in that 3, 4, and 5-year-old range where they're old enough to start to understand, but maybe not able to grasp the entire situation. But making sure each child has a space in both households. Oftentimes, one of the households is going to be home and one they're going to be visiting. So to curb that, making sure children do have their own space. If you have one parent that is newly getting a home or an apartment, giving the children a say in decorations or setups can be so important and really go a long way in creating that belonging feeling. But packing a bag should be minimalized. Packing a bag is not only super stressful for you, but also the children. What have you forgotten? Do they have their blankie? What about the right sippy cup, the snacks that are involved? All of the things that it takes to care for a child, even for a short time. Both of sets of those should be at each home. That makes the child feel comfortable and safe and that they belong in both households. Their favorite sippy cup is in both homes. Their favorite type of blanket, their favorite pillow, their favorite snacks, their toiletries, their personal items. There's 2 sets of them so they don't have to travel back and forth. So that's going to ease you as a parent, so you're not, randomly throwing things in bags and worried about what you forgot, but also that the child feels like they know what's expected and know where their things are. The next piece is just staying connected to your children when they're not there. It's easy to say, I'll just call them or we'll FaceTime, but really taking the time to have a schedule that works for both parents. Are you going to FaceTime before bed for 10 minutes? Are you going to take a phone call after school each day? Is your child old enough to text you back and forth? What is that going to look like? And make sure that's part of the routine and the schedule, but also understanding that if you would like that to happen at the co-parent's house, that you're honoring that schedule just the same way at your own place. And then having regularly scheduled family check-ins. These family check-ins can often feel like, a Zoom call when you ask a question and everybody's staring at you blankly at first, right? So you're sitting down to check in. How is everybody feeling? How is the schedule working? Is everything going well? Is there any issues we need to talk through as a family? That can feel really tight and structured, but if you continue with those and it's consistent and you offer that safe place of authenticity where they can share how they're feeling, you will stumble across small things that maybe can be fixed easily. Small things that children are holding on to, that the show they usually watch, that's during drop-off time and they don't get to watch it anymore. Maybe that's bothering them. What a simple fix. Or the things that they're doing at a certain parent's house, they don't have the right clothes, or they wish this pair of shoes was here or there. Now, these things can seem really simplistic to us and almost like, oh my goodness, I can't worry about that. But those are things that children can hold on to. It's those small moments and those small things that if we are able to resolve for them, help build trust in the situation and that they're cared about and that their emotions are valid. My last piece of advice or strategy would be take a partner. We, as your childcare provider, as at Woodland, and I know many other childcare providers, we're your partner in your child's education and life, not just somebody that teaches them their ABCs. We can help you with navigating those big emotions and also keep you informed. We're oftentimes the ones that are going to see any change in behavior, whether it's sleep patterns, eating patterns, before you may, because we do have that group setting. Definitely don't have to, reach out and share any personal business with your childcare provider, but letting them know what's going on with your child, that maybe there is going to be two households, letting them help you with that transition between homes and what to expect, and keeping you informed can be so impactful, because we want to be part of those rules and routines with you. We want to hold steady and, again, walk in step with you unilaterally, so that we're doing the same things that you're doing at home and can be, again, a partner in their life, not just their education. So now we've talked through, how to set up a schedule, how to talk through emotions and routines, talked about some strategies. I wanted to leave you with some additional resources that I find to be so impactful and helpful. First is KinderCare does a lot of great webinars, and we have a lot of fantastic experts that sit on some of our boards. And the three that I have found to be so useful were the three listed here about strategies to ease child's anxiety, supporting your children's mental health, and then tips for establishing routines. Those are all fabulous and pretty short webinars that you can take a look at. And then I always recommend two books that I love, Two Homes and The Youngest Grievers. Both of those are excellent books in helping to understand what your child's processing through and how to best help them.